Hotep, Namaste, peace and love, everybody. My name is Ra, and I'm broadcasting on behalf of 13scienceastrology.com. This particular episode is pertaining to a very important transit that is taking place with Saturn. This is a Saturn transit, and Saturn is about to shift. It's actually shifting right now as we speak, and it's shifting into a new constellation. And I'm going to get into that in a second, but I want to first go ahead and break down, first of all, why I'm making this video. And I'm making this video because I am definitely a 13 signs astrologer, and according to 13 signs astrology, Saturn is getting ready to shift into Libra. Saturn has been in Virgo for like the past 4 years, and it's going to be shifting into Libra pretty much right now. It's happening right now. By the end of this year, it'll be all the way in Libra. Now, this is going to be a major shift because Saturn is called Father Time, according to astrology. Saturn is termed the father of time. Very key here when you talk about time. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. Now, first thing you want to understand is that according to Western astrology, Saturn is actually right now, I believe, in Scorpio. According to Western astrology, they have Saturn placed in Scorpio right now. That's not correct according to the zodiac. We do have on our program that we're going to be releasing really soon, we do have a planetarium where you can look at the different planets and see where they are according to the zodiac. And Saturn is right now shifting into Libra according to the original astronomical zodiac, which is the most accurate zodiac that we use at 13 signs astrology. So Saturn is shifting, very key, into a new constellation. Now let me go ahead and go into what Saturn is, what this planet deals with when it comes to astrology. Now Saturn is called Father Time, and this is because of a very key point here that a lot of astrologers don't realize because they don't study a lot of the mythology. And that's why I get into a lot of the mythology in relationship to astrology. And when you study mythology, you have to study, okay, like you have Saturn, which I believe is the Roman name for it. But if you trace it back, the ancients used different names for Saturn. And one of the names that was used for Saturn actually was Enlil, believe it or not. The name Enlil, I know most people, when they think about Enlil in Sumerian information, they think about the god Enlil. And Enlil is a title. It's a title that a planet can hold. It's a title that a group of beings can hold. It's a title that one particular being can actually hold as well, according to the Syrians and different beings on different star constellations. They know when they hear that a being is an Enlil, that tells them something about that particular being. When you talk about an Enlilite versus an Enkiite, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to get into that here. So when you talk about Saturn, you have to understand where it came from as far as the name that the ancients called it. Because the ancients acknowledged Saturn as Enlil, according to the ancient Sumerians, and according to them and the Dogons, which are basically both the same culture, really, but just in different parts of the world, because they were taught by the same group. But according to the Dogon and according to the Sumerians, what was going on is that the planet Saturn is Enlil or whatever. But according to the Dogon and Sumerians, what I was going to say is that the planet Saturn, they actually mapped the all the different planets or whatever. Like, say for instance, the planet Pluto was discovered in 1934 by so-called modern scientists. Well, these ancients, they knew about the planet Pluto way back 3,000-4,000 years ago. Same thing with the Sumerians. They knew about Pluto. They had names for these different planets. Like the particular name for Pluto was Gaga. So they had a name for Pluto. It's called Gaga, and I've talked about this in other videos. But I'm bringing all this up because I want to talk about basically how the ancients knew about Saturn. It was discovered, in our modern world, you know what I'm saying, kind of recent, but Saturn has always been a planet that's been known for the most part, you know what I'm saying, by the ancients or whatever. I mean, they always know it was out there because you can actually see Saturn without a telescope. It's the planet, it's basically the furthest planet that we can see without a telescope. So you can actually observe that, but it's still amazing that the ancients knew about it, you know what I'm saying, and were able to actually document a lot of information about it. And this is because of the story. And the story is dealing with Enlil and Enki and going into the whole Father Time thing. You see, Enlil and Enki were two brothers, and most of you have heard this story if you've read any type of Sumerian information, like if you've read the different Sumerian tablets, like the tablets of Enlil and other tablets of Enki, and just the different tablets of Sumeria. You've heard what I'm about to say. But Enlil and Enki were brothers, and their father was Anu. And this is important because Anu gave, after a long story, because at first he didn't give rulership to any of them, but eventually, over time, Anu gave one of his sons, rulership over Earth. And this particular son, according to some scholars, they say it's Enlil, and some scholars say it's Enki. So that's where the whole war comes in. So Enlil and Enki couldn't even agree on it. In some texts, Enki's the man, some texts, Enlil's the man. So basically what happens is they say officially Enlil was the heir to the throne. And the reason for this is because of the fact that Anu, his father, was married to his mother. Enki was older than Enlil, so he felt like he should have been the heir to the throne, but his mother was not married to Anu. So they weren't married. So that basically means that, he was an illegitimate, kind of like an illegitimate son, even though he was the oldest. So that kind of created dissension in and of itself right there. So they had a war, over who was the patriarch or Father God in heaven. So when Christians pray and when people pray in general, and they say, "Our Father who art in heaven," they have to realize that this was a war between which father was the ruler over heavens. Because some people say Enki was the father, or is the father. Some people say Enlil was the father. And this war goes into the Lucifer Satan versus the God thing. I mean, it goes to the male patriarchy versus the female matriarchy argument that a lot of people have. Like, this whole Enlil and Enki thing gets really deep because the Enlil and Enki story is at the root of human war. You know what I'm saying? You have the Enkyites, the Earthlings, the Earth people, the materialists, because Enki means Earth. Enki, which is the Earth. And then you have Enlil, which means the heavens. Because Enlil was the quote-unquote legitimate heir and given rulership over the heavens. But, Enki didn't listen to that, of course, so he went and took and pretty much developed his own cult, developed his own doctrine, and pretty much put within this doctrine that he was the father because he felt like he was older. And he had a lot of different reasons for doing this, and a lot of the Enki followers, believe it or not, still hold true to this doctrine to this day, and they believe in the do-it-yourself mode of doing things, which is, pretty much dealing with, like, say for instance, in meditation or whatever, they believe in using your kundalini to get things versus praying to an outside entity to get things or whatever. So they believe in being self-governing, but they don't really acknowledge, like the higher orders of light, because you have orders of light or codes of light. You have basically orders that are basically within the light. So these followers, or these particular Enki followers, they only go so high, like when it comes to the codes of light. And dealing with the order of light. So Enlil, his followers, they go deeper into the codes of light and the order of light because they go higher up into the heavens. So they're dealing with, in higher dimensions because they're dealing with the order of light, whereas Enki followers are earthlings, pretty much. You're not really just earthlings like on planet Earth, but when I say earthlings, I'm talking about materialists. So they're basically dealing with material and matter, so they rule the order of the earth. So when you talk about the earth, the Enki followers rule the earth elements. So what's going on here is that Enki, he didn't care. Like, he didn't care that, like his father appointed his younger sibling as the ruler or whatever. He was like, forget that. I'm still going to do my thing. I'm still going to set up my order. And he basically went against the council to do certain things and set up certain orders, and he has followers even to this day. Now, he went to prison. There's a lot of argument over what happened to Enki. I did a video on that, and that's not what this video is about. But I'm going into all of this because I want to talk about Saturn. And it's important to understand that whether you acknowledge Saturn as Enki or Enlil, Saturn is called Father Time. According to astrology, Saturn is I guess you could say the most dominant personal planet. Saturn is the most dominant personal planet. You have different personal planets, starting from the Sun, going to the Moon, going to Mercury, going to Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and then Saturn. So you got Saturn, which is the 7th personal planet. It's a very important planet. It's actually the planet, the day Saturday, which happens to be the day that I'm making this video, is a Saturday, is actually named after the planet Saturn. So when you talk about the Sabbath, the Shabbat, all that goes into Saturn. That came from Saturn. The Shabbat is basically, when you talk about the rings of Saturn and all of that, that's going into the Shabbat, which is a lot of information that I don't want to go into here. But basically, just suffice it to say that Saturn is a very important planet when it comes to religion, when it comes to astrology, and when it comes to the order of the Luciferians, and then the order of the Galactic Federation of Light, or that order of, basically that order that deals with the the codes of light. You know what I'm saying? And being able to, not really to control, but to regulate what goes on and which beings are able to access certain levels of the light. Because certain levels of light are controlled by different ascended masters, and only certain masters are able to access those codes of light. So that's what it comes down to when you talk about like who's the father or who's the ruler. Really, essentially, Enlil, since he's given more access, his access goes higher up into the heavens. So when you start talking about you want to go higher up, you would have to deal with Enlil type of information. Now, when you talk about Enlil, you have to remember, on one level it could be a being, or ET, or whatever you want to call it, but on another level it's information. You know what I'm saying? There's a doctrine. The Enlil doctrine is different from the Enki doctrine. The Enki doctrine talks about certain things on one level, and the Enlil doctrine talks about things on another level. So you have to understand that. So Saturn, really, who's the father of Saturn, or who was the ruler of it, was really between Enki and Enlil. It was really between Enki and Enlil. And I assigned Enlil as the ruler over Saturn for different reasons or whatever, according to astrology. And I won't go into that here, but so Saturn basically is shifting. It's shifting from Virgo into Libra. Now Saturn has been in Virgo for a really long time. I mean, not really long time, but I mean, I guess long to some. It's been there since 2008 actually, or late 2007, going into 2008. So everything that just happened, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to remember, like, Saturn being called Father Time, like Saturn dictates the course of the energy. Like, when the energy comes down from the heavens, Saturn is going to dictate, you know what I'm saying, like how this energy is regulated, you know what I'm saying, like, or how it comes down into the rest of the personal planets. Like, as far as, what I mean by this is that Saturn is the ultimate timekeeper, the ultimate judge. So it's going to look over and oversee the rest of the planets or whatever, as far as to make sure that you're dealing with, not really overseeing the rest of the planets, excuse me, but overseeing pretty much you as far as your relationship to the rest of the planets, and making sure that you're dealing with certain energies correctly or not correctly. So that's why Saturn is called the planet of karma, because Saturn comes in and it pretty much brings up all the dirt that you kind of like throw to the side, things that you want to forget about. So when a Saturn transit happens, it digs up all that dirt. So that's why everybody's really scared of Saturn a lot of times. That's why some people say Saturn is Satan. And that's why I'm trying to go into this here, because that goes back to the Enlil and Enki thing, actually, too. Believe it or not, with the whole Saturn is Satan thing. Because, again, Enlil and Enki, was the whole God and devil thing, was basically a war between them. And sometimes Enlil was God, and other times Enki was God. Sometimes Enlil was the devil, and other times Enki was the devil. So you have, you know what I'm saying, like basically different times that they like sit in these different positions in these different seats or whatever. So so as far as like the ruler or whatever, like again, you can really say that Enki has an aspect of Saturn as far as Enki information, because Saturn has an earth aspect, but then Enlil has an aspect of Saturn too. So really it's like a shared rulership as far as like who will be the ruler of Saturn according to the Sumerian information or whatever. So the transition that happened, let's get to like how this is going to affect you, the particular listener out there, because when a major planet like this transitions, and the fact that it's transitioning during the shift is very key here, because the fact that the quarantine is pretty much being lifted as we speak. We are pretty much in alignment with the galactic center as we speak, and not only that, we are very close to the galactic center, which means that our sun is as close as it's been in the past like 26,000 years, I believe it is, to the galactic center, because our sun does move. You know what I'm saying? It moves around another central sun, you know what I'm saying, which is at the center of this galaxy, and we are close to that. We have periods where we're close to that sun and periods where we're further away from that sun. So we're close to that sun right now, and then with the Saturn shift happening, Saturn going into Libra is going to cause a major shift for everybody, because Saturn is called a transpersonal planet. So Saturn shifts happen, when they happen, they affect everybody. So Saturn going through Virgo is very key, because Virgo is called the planet, the constellation of cleansing. And Saturn brings up all of the junk, your diet, all the stuff that people been beating over your head on YouTube, the different teachers out there that have been trying to get you to change your diet since 2007. That's been coming from, like, it's been happening before that, but like the teachers that really came on the scene in 2007, they were riding off of that Saturn going into Virgo energy. So when Saturn went into Virgo, a lot of stuff happened. Like Barack Obama got into office off of the Saturn and Virgo energy. Very key here. All this stuff plays a key fact, because we are going into the cleansing period. The cleansing period. So when you start talking about cleansing and healing of disease, a lot of times a destruction aspect has to take place before you can heal. You have to destroy the disease before you can heal. So Saturn went through a cleansing process and pretty much went through that for the past 4 years. So a lot of people have changed their diets. A whole lot of people haven't changed their diets and have suffered from it, have caught diseases. Some people have died since then. A lot of people have found like that they want to really go into a deeper aspect of themselves since 2008 or whatever. Like, and what I mean by that is that they wanted to find more of an identity, more of a self identity for themselves versus identifying with their spouse or their relationship partner or whatever. So they chose to bounce and kind of be on their own. And people went through this shift in different ways. The first phase of this shift. So that was the first phase, which started in 2007. And now we're going through the second phase of it. Saturn is getting ready to go into Libra. Now, Libra is actually an extension of Virgo. Now, what I mean by that is that the zodiac tells a story. So each sign is connected to another sign for a reason. So when that sign comes before that sign, like say, for instance, when Virgo comes before Libra, Virgo tells a story, and that story leads up into the story of Libra. So to understand Libra, you got to understand Virgo. So we went into the cleansing aspect, and then now we're going into the balance or the scales. So basically we get judged. So Virgo is the time when you cleaned up yourself, you got yourself right, you know what I'm saying, for the past 4 years. Virgo is a very long constellation according to 13 signs astrology. So when Saturn transited Virgo, it actually took about 4 years. And then normally, sometimes it takes between 2 and 4 years to go through different constellations. Now, it's not going to take that long to go through Libra, but it did take that long to go through Virgo or whatever. So Saturn, it transitioned into Libra or whatever. So now you're going to get judged. And now, when I'm saying, I'm not talking about right or wrong, evil, God, or nothing like that, but you can kind of say Saturn is Father Time. So it's the closest thing to what people would call God. When they talk about God's going to punish you, and the Father God aspect, or the right hand fist is going to hit you type of aspect, or the punishing force of the destroying force of God, this is Saturn. The mothering aspect, you know what I'm saying, is another planet. But we're talking about the Father here, the patriarch. So when you talk about Saturn being God in that sense, yeah, you could say that. So now God is going to judge, because Saturn, which is God, is transitioning from Virgo, the constellation of cleansing, into Virgo scales, because Libra is the scales of Virgo, which is Libra. So Saturn is going into Libra, which is an air sign. So now you will be judged. So Saturn now goes from the earth element of cleansing your body, which is the earth. You wanted to cleanse your body for those past 4 years. You should have done that by now. So now you're going into the air element. So now you get judged. Saturn becomes an intellect, because the air deals with intellect. So you're going to get judged by Saturn, because Saturn is a transpersonal planet, which means that it affects you from a transpersonal perspective, which means that Saturn deals with karma. So everything that you did comes back at you now. Everything that you did the past 4 years is going to come back at you now when Saturn transitions into Libra. Saturn's going to go into Libra, like I said, and that deals with the scales. So you have to, I mean, it's never too late. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's too late from the things, like if you were just screwing up or messing up for the past 4 years or whatever, it's not too late. I'm not saying that. But when I am saying that, you got to get it right now, like today. There is no more thinking about it. If you were thinking about changing your diet, you should do it today. If you were thinking about possibly moving on and merging on and going on your own and maybe transition to another city and somebody was holding you back, it's probably about time for you to clip them. Because if you don't, you're going to be judged by Saturn, the intellect, and basically you're going to be judged for your actions, good or bad. So, I mean, you get what you put out type of thing. So Saturn is definitely the planet of karma, so it dishes that out. So it's very key here, going through the Saturn transition or whatever. Now, this can affect you different ways according to your natal chart. It can affect you in a lot of different ways, depending on where Libra is in your natal chart. You would have to look for, if you have a natal chart that was done by me, you can look into your natal chart or whatever, and you can find the Libra constellation, and you will find out that, just look at the beginning of Libra, and look at the Libra constellation, and look at the very beginning, the first degree, and that's pretty, well, really the 0 degree. It's at 0 point right now. Saturn is right at 0 point, like right on the cusp of Virgo and Libra. So it's really at a 0 degree. So you want to find that 0 degree, and that's where Saturn is in your natal chart right now. And then what you want to do from there is that you want to look at that particular house and see which house that is. And whichever house that is, that's how Saturn transit is going to affect you, according to the 13 signs or whatever. So if you haven't gotten a reading by me. Now, those people that are interested, of course, I do consultations according to the different planets or whatever. So I definitely do all the transiting constellations and consultations or whatever. You can visit my website. I do the spiritual consultations through the website. So you can visit that at the link below. But Saturn transition is going to affect a lot of people in relationships. Relationships are going to become very key here, because Libra deals with relationships. Now, Saturn is exalted, so it's very powerful in Libra. very powerful position for Saturn. So what's going to happen with that is that it's going to make a lot of relationship karma come back at you. So you've been screwing around, messing around with your significant other. You made a contract, you know what I'm saying, to all those guys after you made a contract with that woman. You know what I'm saying? And then you go out here and do something opposite, but you told her you was going to do one thing and then do it. That karma's going to come back on you, because people say that they get conscious, you know, and they like, well, I'm conscious. I don't got to follow certain laws and rules, and like all this stuff about cheating, all that stuff is just Western, you know, like Western stuff or whatever. Like, I'm conscious or whatever, and I don't have to follow those rules. But you got to think, though, you still made a contract verbally. If you want to live like that, just be straight up like, yo, this is how I live. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm with you right now, but when I'm not with you, I mean, you really can't ask me what I'm doing, because, I mean, I do have other females or whatever that I deal with. I mean, you just say that and just be straight up, because a female respects you if you say that. She might not like it, because females don't like that. They don't like a guy that's kicking it with a lot of different females or whatever. Some females don't. I'm not going to say every. Some females do like that. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of females, they don't want no guy that's like messing around with a lot of different females. And I understand that for a lot of different reasons, but I'm just saying, if you're going to do that as a male, though, this is me giving advice to the males, like, just be straight up or whatever, because with Saturn transitions, going back to the point, it's going to affect relationships. So you really love her, you better do right. You better do right. You better start doing it now, because Saturn going in Libra, you're going to get judged, those scales. See, Libra deals with my. So wherever you're imbalanced at, Saturn's going to make you become balanced. It's going to judge you. Like, wherever you're imbalanced at, the judgment. So you could have been imbalanced before Saturn hit Libra. But now Saturn hit Libra, now the whole principle of my becomes very real. And it's very interesting that Saturn is going into Libra during the time of the shift. It really is, because if you think about it, it's like we have to now be in tune with nature. Because if we're not in tune with nature, we're going to be imbalanced. We're going to be basically thrown off, and we're going to eventually either fall off of the planet, which aka transform, aka die, go to the fourth dimension that way, or we're going to stay grounded, do the things that we need to do so we can transition and shift into the fourth dimension in our bodies. So we can be alive pretty much in the fourth dimension. So Saturn going into this Libra constellation is very key here. This is going to last for about 2 years. It's a very good time. Now, Saturn doesn't have to be evil. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it depends on really how it affects you in your natal chart, really. It depends on where it's at, which planets is aspecting. Depends on a lot of stuff. So what I would suggest is that you definitely, for those people that are really into their astrology, I also have a transiting report on my website for those people that, you know, can't afford the consultation. I would suggest that you check out the transiting report, because in the transiting report, we do give out a lot of information about. I'm going to be doing a video about the transit report, but just to kind of like, you know, give you a heads up about it here. In the transit report, we do kind of go into more of the aspects that Saturn will be making to your natal planet. So we can give you a 2-year breakdown of the aspects that Saturn will make for the next 2 years, like a forecast report. So we do it month to month on the website. I mean, but you can get up to 2 years if you want to. But the transit reports are really good, because it's like a weather forecasting report. And I don't want to talk too much about it here, but just to kind of like let you know, like when a planet is transiting like Saturn is very key. I do have to kind of mention it. Well, Saturn transits, it affects you a certain kind of way when it transits into a particular house. So you have your natal chart, and you have the planets affecting you a certain kind of way at the time of your birth. That's always in effect. Your natal chart is always in effect. But then you have transits, and these transits cause certain aspects of your natal chart to kind of like certain parts of your personality to unlock. So, you know, like sometimes when you feel like one day you're like, especially like the females, you're like, why do I feel like a bitch today? Like, why do I feel like that? Maybe it's a transiting planet. Or even for the guys, you know what I'm saying? Like, you might just wake up that one day and you got that chip on your shoulder. You're like, man, why do I feel like I ain't taking no shit today? Like, if the nigga say some shit to me, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I got to keep it real here. I know you're like, man, you talking like you straight from the streets, Ram Hotep. Because I got a lot of people that from different walks of life that listen to me, and they're like, damn, sometimes you just kind of like, you ramble and you kind of sound like you're from the hood, a little rough around the edges. But you got to remember, like, I can only be who I am, and some people see that and they're attracted to that. So, I mean, I have to say that here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can only be me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't be who somebody else wants me to be or whatever. Like, I can only be myself. You know what I'm saying? So, and people will gravitate towards that because they might see something in me that is familiar to them. People are attracted to familiar spirits. So you have to learn about that. Like, every teacher, there's nobody out there that's supposed to get everybody. Like, people got to get that out of their mind about this whole get everybody thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, people get who they're supposed to get. So, back to my point. So, Saturn transits deep, affecting relationships, the law. When Saturn goes into this particular constellation of Libra, Libra deals with the law. So, legal disputes, or people that are going through any type of issues with the law. You need to really look at the Saturn transit thing, look at it in your natal chart, dissect it, see what's going on with it so you can figure out how this transit, how you can benefit from it, because you can benefit from it. You need to see how you can benefit from this energy. And the only way to look at that is to look at it in perspective of you. You have to like interpret it in perspective of you. And to do that, the only way to do that is to find out which house it's in for you. Because it's going to fall in a different house for everybody. For some people, it might be the first house, dealing with the self. But, you know, I always go through the houses. The second house, it might be dealing with money. The third house, it might be dealing with the mind. The fourth house, it might transit into for some people. It might be dealing with the family and domestic issues. The fifth house, creativity. Sixth house, work. Your work and your job, your everyday job and your service to the people. The seventh house, it might affect your marriage and relationships. Eighth house, it could affect your sexual life. Ninth house, the Saturn transit could begin to affect your overall recognition, and you, like if you were traveling, a person that travels a lot, you know what I'm saying, stuff like that, it could affect you that way. Or it could affect you on an educational level with the ninth house as well too, as far as your academic education and your spiritual education. 10th house, it could affect your career life. The 11th house, it could affect your outlook on your friends. It could affect your hopes and dreams and your wishes. It could affect your 12th house, your subconscious mind, the realm of your past life. You might have a lot of past life memories during this time. Now, the interpretations, like when we go into the like the deep transit interpretations, I mean, they can get way more specific than what I'm saying, but what I'm doing here in this video is to try to give people free information so they can kind of at least see how it's going to affect them to a certain degree, because people can't afford certain things or whatever. So I understand that, like, you know what I'm saying, like due to the recession. So I always got the free side for people that, you know what I'm saying, just can't afford it. And they're like, I want to at least benefit off of it to a certain degree. Well, find out where it's at and which house it's in, and just press rewind on this video and you can see how it's going to affect you in that particular house, this particular transition. So very strong transition. It lasts for 2 years. So once it transitions into Libra, this is a 2-year effect. It's going to take place for 2 years. So definitely take advantage of this energy. You have to be like a magician. You know what I'm saying? Like once you know how the energy affects you, then you can play off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like what I mean by play off of it is like, okay, you know it's going to affect you this way, so maybe you don't want to do a thing at this time, or maybe you do want to do a thing at this time, because Saturn is father time. So it dictates how you are to operate within time. And I said I was going to cover time here. Time is basically essentially space. Like when people always say, well, when time is speeding up and all that type of stuff, like what exactly do you mean by that? Time is space. That's all it really is. So when you start talking about time and time speeding up, it's just talking about, hey, basically now the amount of time, say for instance, what felt like 30 minutes to you 5 years ago may only feel like 10 minutes to you now, because 30 minutes to you just doesn't feel the same. Or, you know what I'm saying, like, or 3 hours to you just doesn't feel the same because time for you is speeding up. And this happens for people that meditate as well a lot, like people that get deep into meditation. You know what I'm saying? Like once they come out, time to them doesn't seem the same because they're dealing with something called space-time. When you're meditating, you're going into space-time, and there's a space-time continuum. So you're outside of the vacuum of this fake time that we're in. You know what I'm saying? So you're stepping outside of that. So when you start talking about time speeding up, you come back, and then when 3 hours to you is nothing. And people are like, man, I got to sit here for 3 hours and do this. I can't wait. I got stuff to do. But you're like, 3 hours is nothing because you used to sitting for 3 hours of meditation. You know what I'm saying? So then you come back and you're like, time is flying. And then you get to a point where you're only sleeping every other day. You know what I'm saying? So it's deep. You know what I'm saying? It could get really deep or whatever as far as dealing with this whole time and space. But time and space and Saturn is father time. So when Saturn makes a transition, this is going to tell you the sign of the times pretty much in general for that time period. So Saturn in Libra means for the next 2 years, we're in a time of justice. And I need to point this out here. Libra deals with justice, the scales of justice. And justice is actually ruled by a sword as well. Like justice is not always what you would think is like the right thing to do. Like I'm going to be just. Like when they say God is just, this means that God basically ain't taking no shit. Which means that you do something, God is going to take the sword of justice. You know what I'm saying? If you do something to harm another, or if you do something to potentially harm the universe, God's going to take his sword of justice and attack you with it. You know what I'm saying? To come at you with it. So when you start talking about justice, justice is pretty much the rule that keeps everything governed. So it's really a sword. It's represented by a sword, but it's also represented by the scales, because when things are out of balance, then that's when the sword has to come in. You know what I'm saying? But as long as things are balanced with the scales, then no sword is needed. The sword is just there to let people know, like, you get out of hand, I'm going to have to use the sword. So that's all it is. Whatever, dealing with like the whole principle of justice. When you start talking about Saturn being in that particular constellation of Libra, it's important to understand that concept of justice, because everything you do will be paid back to you way quicker with that happening. I mean, like I said, at first it was about health, but now it's just about, Saturn is intellectual now. Saturn is becoming an intellect. And the intellects are usually not as compassionate. They don't have a lot of water. Like air sign people aren't as compassionate as water sign people, so Saturn will clip you. Like, all right, you're doing this clip, I'll judge you. It's like an intellect. It'll just write you off. Next. So Saturn switches modes and positions and plays out differently. See, the planets, they play out. Like, this is how they operate. Like, when they transition into a different sign, the energy has to play out. Energies have to play out. And people can't really understand this, like linear people, but things play out on a subtle level. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like when Saturn goes into, say, for instance, if it was in your 5th house dealing with romance, it's going to be romantic situation, either the lack of them or whatever. All the dirt and the things that happen with romance are going to be dug up for you. So Saturn is called like a malefic planet, which means that, like, Saturn is more like disagreeable, if you want to use that term or whatever, or it's more so-called negative to humans because of the fact that Saturn brings out everything that you try to hide. Like, you know what I'm saying? It kicks up dust. Like, it's not going to let you hide anything. It's basically, it requires you to be structured, balanced, and orderly. That's all it requires. And if you honor Saturn, it's like a father. It'll reward you. You know what I'm saying? But it's a left-brained more so. It rewards you based on your ability to be structured, practical. So that's the earth part of it. That's the Enki part of it. It's the earth part of it. But then the Enlil part of it, or the intellectual side, see, it's 2 sides of Saturn. And in astrology, we talk about it from an esoteric point of view. So we talk about like how most people only see that, like, they don't ever get above the belt of Saturn. Saturn is a very big planet, so it's a phrase that astrologers use, and we say that most people don't get above the belt of Saturn. What that basically means is that pretty much it's so big that we only see one part of it. We don't see the upper end. Saturn has a top half, but it's so big we only see the bottom half or below the belt. So we only see the earth part, and that's why people get so scared, like, oh, Saturn's coming to judge. It's gonna, because you're thinking about the things that's gonna change for you and the changes that you're gonna have to make, because it changes the earth element. Like I said, it kicks up dust. But then there's an intellectual part. If you honor the intellectual part of Saturn, or the air part of it, which is the higher half of it, then you won't have to worry about the judgment or things changing on the earth element for you, or materials being transformed or changed in a certain kind of way, or being destroyed in a certain kind of way. You won't have to worry about the taskmaster. See, Saturn is called the taskmaster. So you won't have to worry about the taskmaster kicking up dust on you and basically bringing a bunch of disagreeable, negative, malefic things into your life. If you honor it before in advance and fix those things and analyze which house is going to be in, so you can deal with it before it transitions. And some people, like I have to point this out here too, like when it transitions into a different sign, that doesn't mean it's going to switch houses for you. It might still have been in a certain house. You might not have been paying any attention to it. But the thing is that when it switches, even though it's going to go into a different sign, and it might be in that same house, it's still going to have an effect over you. You have to understand that, because you're going to feel that switch, even though it's in the same house. That means you're going to have to deal with that energy differently. Like, say, for instance, it was in one house in Virgo, like if it was in the 10th house for you in Virgo, and then it switched into the 10th house, but then it went to Libra 10th house, because you know you can have 2 constellations in the same house. And the way you want to determine a house, I got to kind of like digress a little bit, is to look at the previous house, and then you want to look at the house itself. So look at the previous house, and look at the line separating the previous house from the house, and that's called the cusp. So whatever the constellation itself, which is the outer ring, it's on the outer ring of the zodiac. The constellation itself is going to go over different signs on the cusp, on the line or whatever. So you want to see which constellation is over that particular cusp or that house, and that's the house that Libra is in for you, or Virgo is in for you. So for some people, back to what I was saying, when it switches and goes into Libra, it's going to have a different effect. So even though it might be in that same house for you, it's going to have a different effect, you know what I'm saying, than when it was in Virgo. So you definitely want to research that, look into that, learn how to work with that energy by first learning how it takes effect, read about how Saturn takes effect in Libra, and learn how to work with that energy, you know what I'm saying, for you and in your life. And those people that want the advanced lessons and the advanced information, we do offer consultations. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. That's my Saturn and Libra video in relationship to the shift. Very important time. I suggest you guys definitely take advantage of this energy, and I wish you well in this new energy. I wish you well in this new vibration. Welcome to the new energy, in the new phase. So until we meet again, I'll leave you in peace, love, light, and prosperity.